Hi, everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our Facebook group and our YouTube channel and our great sponsors, Abitiva Casa, Italy Rooting, and Phil Italy. And my guest today is Vincent Maione, and he is the chairman of the New Jersey Italian Heritage Commission. So welcome, Vincent. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate you having me.
I've been looking forward to this one because I've met several people from the commission now, and I interviewed a couple. So it's exciting to have the current commissioner on, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we do, where's your family from in Italy, and when did they arrive in the country?
Well, we are officially Italian immigrants. So my parents, it was my dad and my mom who are still alive. My father's 92, my mother's 98. And my sister and I, we immigrated to New Jersey we came over on the Christopher Columbus, vessel, the ship. Obviously, most travel back in the 60s. It was 1964 when we came over, March 19th, I think it was, of 1964. Most travel across the ocean was done by ship, unless you were very wealthy, and we were not. So we came over because my father had a contract. He was a tailor. We are from Napoli. He was a tailor. He was a master tailor in Napoli. And there was a men's suit clothing manufacturer in Hamilton, New Jersey, which is in Atlantic County, New Jersey, in the town of Hamilton. And they found my father. They made him an offer. They gave him a contract, and off we came. I guess it was exactly 12 days after my second birthday, because I was born on March 4th. We immigrated. Well, actually, it was 14 days. No, more than that. It was 17 days. It was the 19th, and we finally arrived. Is that when we came in through New York? I don't believe it was Ellis Island. We just came in and disembarked, and I'm not sure where. Probably was Bayonne or somewhere. I don't even think my father remembers. But we disembarked, and we were picked up, and we were brought to Hamilton. And my parents still live in this town from where we immigrated to back in '64. And my father, worked very hard over his career, and here we are.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great. My dad's family's from Napoli. They came a lot further ago, but it was so exciting to be there and walk the streets that they walked. And so that's interesting. So were they? I'm assuming this was like a factory, right?
It's a clothing factory that was in business probably, this was early 60s when textiles was huge in New Jersey. And they were in business, I would imagine, 5 to 10 years prior to us arriving. And then they finally closed down in the early 80s. I think it was 81 or 82 that finally closed down, and which is very unfortunate. And the community where we grew up, there were at least 6 other textile factories, shirt companies, pants companies, and other manufacturing companies in the town I grew up in and went to school in. So they've all shut down, obviously, over the years. And my father, to your point, Bob, my father really wasn't looking. They searched him out, and they found him, and they made him an offer that he thought, here's an opportunity for us to make a better life for ourselves. And he chose to move us over, which was a big deal, right? For anybody to come over to a country. My father didn't speak English, not a lick, didn't know how to read in English. He had bought a car, driving around, not knowing where he was going. And, we were little kids, and, he survived. He opened up a little tailor shop in town, probably only 2 years after we moved here. Opened up a little tailor shop where he did his own alterations in town. And he still has that little tailor shop in town.
Really? Wow, that's so cool. That's
He
great.
doesn't do much alterations anymore because his hands are getting kind of arthritic, but he still goes every once in a while, and, he putzes around.
Well, good for him. That's that's really so cool. And it's a shame that those places have all closed down. It's sad. My wife's mother and father, her mother's from her family's from Sicily and her father's from Puerto Rico, but they both worked in Manhattan as, seamstresses or I don't know what the male version is, tailor, whatever you call them.
Yep.
Uh, we think about it that, I remember in the 70s being in the garment district in Manhattan and just seeing the racks and racks and racks of clothes, right?
Yep. Yep. It was huge in the whole country. Well, most of the East Coast, obviously, not the rest of the country, but most of the East Coast, at least the Northeast and Mid Atlantic, was very textile rich. There was we had all access to the oceans, the material was coming in, and there were professionals, there were seamstresses, and there were tailors. Even in the community where this clothing manufacturer brought in another dozen Italian immigrants from Italy, and they all moved to this community to work for this clothing factory, which was a Hamilton Kessler. It was a William B. Kessler Clothing Factory. That was the name of the firm, and it was in Hamilton, New Jersey. And they brought in at least a dozen other Italian families, and most of the men were tailors. And my father, we all grew up together in this little enclave of Italian speaking, because even Hamilton, even in the 60s, it was primarily Italian immigrants, but not off the boat Italian that spoke the language. And most of them were Italian heritage, but didn't speak the language.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that question. So you wouldn't think of Hamilton, New Jersey being this Italian enclave. So what did the early Italians there, why did they come?
Most of it were from Sicily, and they were farmers. And Hamilton is a big agricultural community. So they are famous for their blueberries. If you don't know, Hamilton is the blueberry capital of the world. So before even blueberries, it was mostly vegetables, fruit trees, and they worked the land. That's what they were used to. Either they're from, and mostly from southern Italy, where all the agriculture was, right? They're all, agrarian kind of communities. So they farm the land. They, you know, their families, their families integrated into the community, and it wasn't as challenging because we had an enclave of Italian speaking folks that we all kind of associated with. We all went to the same birthday parties, first Holy Communions, confirmations. So they were our extended family while we were in the U.S.
Yeah, and the light bulb went off in my head when you mentioned the blueberries, because I went there, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. There's a big, huge blueberry farm, I guess you call it, where they sell the plants. And I actually bought a few plants there.
Yeah, there's a bunch right on 206. If you've been on Route 206, that's where there's a couple stands that have actual blueberry plants. There's quite a few. Hamilton is rich in land and rich in blueberry now. Most of the land has been transformed into blueberry plants instead of, they still have some tomatoes, obviously some tomatoes and some other vegetables, but for Hamilton, it's primarily blueberries. Now, if you go a little further south into Vineland, East Vineland specifically, there's where there's a whole realm of other vegetables and fruits that are grown in Vineland. But in Hamilton, it's been mostly concentrated to blueberries.
And we have the best tomatoes in the country.
In the
We all
country,
know that.
exactly.
Jersey tomatoes are the best
Our
tomatoes.
nice sandy soil.
So you grew up mostly Italian. I guess you grew up. I always like to ask people like you whether it was first generation or immigrants. I guess you grew up mostly with Italian food.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, every day we ate in New Jersey in America like my parents would have eaten in Italy. Right?
Mm,
They don't change. Everything's better. Obviously, we've been ingrained. Everything is better if it's Italian.
of course.
The food is better. The furniture is better. Everything's better. Everything's better if it's made in Italy. That's how we were ingrained. So obviously, we ate a little bit different than the rest of the Italians, but they weren't original Italians. So they've been Americanized. We were never really Americanized. We were, we kept, I still speak Italian because of my parents. I still speak to them in Italian. They, they have a wicked accent because you can barely understand them because all their friends were Italian. So they
Mm.
very rarely spoke English. My mother can speak English better than my father. My father, would rather speak Italian, but Unfortunately, he's 92, so most of his friends have passed on. He has outlived most of his friends that he grew up with in New Jersey. But, thank goodness, because I know a lot of immigrants that immigrated here after the war did not want their kids speaking Italian. They were forced to, well, they felt compelled to Americanize and not speak Italian, which I think is a travesty. But I get it. If I was growing up in the 40s and 50s, maybe you would understand, maybe there's a little bit of racism, and concern that you people weren't Americanizing. You know, it's a big circle of life. Right now, we feel the same way. We're feeling the same way, about the Spanish speaking community. But let people speak their language. It's all about keeping your culture and your heritage. It's about being a good person, not about what language you speak.
Yeah, I wish I had learned when I was young. I'm trying again to learn. We have a class at the club, and I'm getting. I could understand it a little bit now, but it's funny that you mentioned that because I always thought my parents when they would speak or my grandparents would speak, I always thought they were speaking Italian, which of course they weren't. They were speaking dialect. And my mom's family's from Bari, and my father's family's from Naples. They would always argue with each other who was speaking the right Italian, and I've learned recently that neither one of them was speaking the right Italian.
Well, to them, they were speaking the right Italian.
So I know this is going to be a stupid question, but you've been back to the hometown in Naples and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all our relatives, obviously, we have no living relatives in the United States. Well,
Really?
and
Wow.
we never had any relatives that immigrated to the United States from the last, we do have, my father does have a first cousin who's passed on that lived in Canada in Niagara Falls. So that's it in North America. Now, in Italy, everybody's there. My father was from a big family. There was 8 of them. They all predeceased him.
Wow.
So there's nobody left on my father's side. There's nobody left on my mother's side. And she was one of 3 daughters. They all predeceased her. My mother's the oldest. And they're all predeceased. So all my uncles and aunts on my parents' side are all deceased. So we keep in touch with all my cousins, my first cousins, that there's a ton of them. A lot of Vincenzo Maiones, because all the firstborn males were all named after their their father's father. So there's a lot of us. There's a lot of my namesake in Napoli and even in Milano. But so I've been there. We used to go almost every other year. My father used to go almost every other summer. We used to go.
That's so great. Wow, that's fantastic. Now, did they live in the Naples proper, the city, or did they live in a town outside of Naples?
Well, my father grew up outside near Ascena, outside of Napoli. And my mother lived in the city in an apartment complex with her mom and dad and 2 sisters. But then when my parents got married, we moved Via Nazionale, which is in
Mhm.
downtown Napoli. And that's where we grew up. That's where I spent my first 2 years of life there. And then we immigrated to the United States.
Boy, I'd love to have your mom and dad on if they ever want to do it. I would just because I just love to know as much as I could find out about Naples. My father's family, he was born in Pagani, my grandfather, and my great grandfather was born in Nocere Superiore. Before they moved here, the family was in Naples because my great grandfather was an attorney and later became a Supreme Court justice in Naples.
Wow.
That's Achilles Sorrentino. My grandmother, she was born in Circola, outside of Naples, and then her family lived right on Via Carbonara, the Hotel Caracciolo. That was part of my family history. And so it was really exciting to see. And I think her family, there's across from the hotel, there's a block of row houses, maybe it's kind of like a 2 or 3 story apartment type of complex. And there's maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12 addresses on this building. And everybody in that family at some point in time were either born or died in this building at their various addresses.
Kind of like my mother.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very close to the Duomo.
Everybody has a Duomo. Every community, every city has a Duomo.
Yeah, and aren't they so fantastic? Aren't they so
Yeah.
beautiful? I mean, it's even you go into some of these small little chapels, and so beautifully done with fresh flowers and the gold and the silver. And
Yeah.
so I'll tell you, my wife goes nuts when we walk down the street over here, and she's like, in Italy, you go to a restaurant and every morning they're out there washing the street. They
Yeah.
don't do that in New Jersey.
No, no, I mean, it just, it was part of their tradition. It was part of their respect and part of their culture to make sure it was appealing. It was visually appealing. If it's not visually appealing, nobody's going to come there. I mean, it's a basic attribute of most humans that they want to be around where things are nice and tidy and they look well kept. Why would I want to eat there if it doesn't look appealing?
Yeah, no, and it's amazing when you're there and you see people cleaning outside the restaurants and early in the morning, and of course we know all the food is fresh there. But two of my dad's first cousins are still alive. They're the children of my grandmother's youngest brother. There were 18 years difference, and we got to meet them, and it was just so great. They live in Torre del Greco right
Uh,
now, so and it's a nice Torre del Greco is very nice because right on the water, and then you could see Naples in the distance and everything like that. So, do you still go try to get there as much as you can?
I haven't been back for about 10 years. I took my children. Actually, the last time all of us went was probably 2000s, early 2000s. So it's been almost 25 years or we took our whole family, my mom, my dad, me, my wife, my three kids. We all went. And that was probably the last time I went with my parents to Italy. And now they're getting too old. They can't do that travel anymore. And then we went back about 10 years ago, but I have to get back there.
Yeah, we've gone a few times. The last trip that we did in May, my wife said, "Enough with the ancestors. I want to go to the north. I want to see Milan. I want to see Bologna. I want to see Pisa." So
Yeah, they're
we did the
beautiful. We've
tourist.
been My uncle lived in Torino. A lot of my aunts and my uncles moved to Milano where all the jobs were. So we've been up there. I got in Ferrara. I have a cousin who lives in Ferrara. She's an attorney and her husband's a pediatrician. They live in Ferrara, which is a nice, wonderful community up there.
I love Ferrara. Now we went to Ferrara because Isabella d'Este is one of my grandmothers.
Ah,
So
okay.
I descend directly from that family. I'd love to have your cousin on and talk about Ferrara. Well, I thought we really, really liked it there because there's no tourists.
I haven't been there. I haven't been there where she lives. I've been, they have when her parents passed away about 10 years ago, and her mother and father had a villa in Chieti. Well, they lived in Chieti. That was where their home was. And they had a beach home at Francavilla al Mare, which is on
Mhm.
the Adriatic side. So we would go there every time we went to Italy. We would spend, because it was always in the summer because my parents were working, and they would have the factory used to give them like the old days, like in Italy, like in Europe, like 2 weeks off, almost a big part of August they would have off. They would shut down the factory, and that's when we would go to Italy. So we would always go back and visit my aunt. This is my father's sister, who owned this villa at Francavilla al Mare, which is it's right on the Adriatic side, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, Ferrara. We took the train from Florence, I think, and it was a nice, easy train ride, and the town and everything is just a short walk from the train station. And yeah, like I said, we really, really liked it there, mainly because there were no tourists. There was all Italians, so it was great.
Really. Yeah, I got to get there.
So let's talk about the New Jersey Italian Heritage Commission. What is it? Why was it started? And what do you guys do?
Well, I appreciate you inquiring about our commission. It was established in two through the help of many, many Italians who are no longer with us, but it was established under Governor McGreevey, who signed the bill through the legislature. And it basically was a realization and an acceptance that there are about 30% of the state of New Jersey comprised of either Italians, of many Americans with Italian descent. And as we know, we know a lot of Italians. There's a lot of Italian communities in New Jersey. So it was recognized that we need to do something to make sure the heritage doesn't go by the wayside. So we were, chartered with the intent of basically developing programs that it was decided by the legislature that the students of our school systems need to understand the value and the culture of what Italians and Italian Americans have done, what Italy has done through the centuries, and what they've done has had an impact on the creation of the United States and the world. And so we, through our leaders right now, we are commissioned to have 19 members. We're down a few members, unfortunately. A couple of them passed away. A couple of them has just resigned from the commission because they couldn't fill their commitment any longer. So we're down to about 13 commissioners. They get appointed by the governor, they get appointed by the Senate president, and they get appointed by the Speaker of the House. They have the appointments. We make recommendations to them, but it's at their discretion who they appoint to the commission. But our charter is to develop programs, and they're programs that talk about various things that Italians and Italian history, both in ancient Europe and ancient, Rome, up to the present day. We provide lessons of, it's either cultural or historical or scientific, art, history. So we put them all on our webpage. It's it's at, ItalianHeritage.com. Anybody wants to go out there and find our lessons and our webpage. All the lessons are there. We promote them to all the school systems in New Jersey from K to 12, any school system, public to private. So we like to get them incorporated. It's not mandatory in the state of New Jersey to incorporate in the lessons, but we make them available. So the instructors, the teachers from K to 12 can incorporate them. They don't have to be part of the lesson plan. They can incorporate them because there's something for every curriculum. There's a session for every curriculum. They can incorporate it as they're instructing one lesson. They can incorporate our lessons into their lesson. And for 10, 15 minutes, every student in the state of New Jersey would have something that they would learn from their heritage. So that was our mission. That was our charter. That's what we plan to do. We have at least one. We'll have two this year, but we at least have one major event where we invite instructors, we invite, legislative leaders to our sessions. We call them our annual Congress, and usually for half a day. And it's usually at Rutgers because we are involved in Rutgers. Our office is housed in the university at Rutgers University. So that's where our office is, in the Italian department at university. So and we try to have it usually centralized, and Trenton is pretty centralized in the state. And this year it's going to be October 25th. Let me make sure that's correct. Pretty sure it's Saturday, October 25th at University of Rutgers. And it's all on our webpage. So we plan on just highlighting, things, our lessons, because we just developed 5 new lessons about women, Italian American women, prominent Italian American women, and what they've done for their country and for society in general. So that's a quick sneak peek. We haven't officially gotten it out to everyone. We will get them out and make a public announcement that they're out there. They're on our webpage. They've already been posted to our webpage, so you can go out there and take a look at them. But we haven't made it public to all the instructors in the state of New Jersey, both at the superintendent level from each county and also to DOE, which is the Department of Education. So with these congresses, we kind of promote these lessons that we develop, and we want to get more into the marketing of these lessons. We have almost 50 lessons. And unfortunately, I don't believe we only get to about maybe 5 to 10% of the population of the state, of the K to 12 population of the state. We want to get it to obviously more. We want to at least reach 50% of the population has at least they've had the opportunity to hear a lesson and get incorporated in their curriculum. So we want to get there in this coming year, the end of this year and next year. We want to do a lot more marketing of this. So every instructor knows they're out there. We plan on attending the New Jersey Education Association's event in Atlantic City, where many, many teachers across the state annually attend down in Atlantic City at the convention center. So during NJ week, we plan on having a booth, and that's how we think we can get to a lot of instructors at the K to 12 level in the state of New Jersey. So that's basically what our mission is.
Yeah, important stuff. I know you're gonna come to our club and present to our members about what you do, but one of the things that they made me the chairman of the cultural commission. I don't know if it's because nobody else wanted it or I am. No, I love it. I live this stuff, but and I think they realize that. But one of the things I want to do is do more for the kids within our club. I mean, we have our own place. You'll see it when you get there. We have a nice club room and we just completely we renovated with a bunch of TVs and tables and stuff like that. And I want to get more stuff for the kids. We do give out a lot of scholarships and we do a lot of good things with the kids within the schools within Ocean Township. But I want to bring them into the club and show them some of this stuff, give them some of these things because maybe the schools don't want to do it. And we have the opportunity to do it within our club, and maybe other clubs could do similar types of things.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, more you can do and utilize our lessons. You can incorporate those lessons. They are available to anybody in the state of New Jersey. Actually, since they're on the webpage, they're available to anybody on the planet. But definitely utilize those lessons. They're very well done. I think they're very well done. So I would definitely, anybody who listens to your podcast, Bob, let it spread the word. These things are available. They're out there. They're very well done, very professionally done. They can be incorporated, whether you have a session in your club or you have a session in, any of your organizations where you have youth there, whatever youth organizations that you want to have, you just want to incorporate the culture. We're not pushing, Italy or the language, more the culture and the values that the country has brought to the planet. And obviously we're kind of, we're a little bit more ingrained in it, and we have a little bit more pride in it, and we believe it's the best. We're just trying to pass on what we believe is the best on to other people that have never experienced what we've experienced.
Yeah, it was a great experience. So I'm curious, do other states have commissions like this?
Believe it or not, there's only one other commission in the United States. You want to guess which one it is?
Well, the obvious one would be New York, but I'm going to say like someplace that you wouldn't think of, like Colorado or Idaho or someplace like that.
Well, that would be the smart answer, right? That would be the obvious answer. New York or Connecticut, somewhere in the Northeast. Well, the good news is that it's not in the West, and it's only a little bit further south of New Jersey. It's actually Delaware.
Really?
Delaware is the only other state in the United States that has an official Italian commission. Believe it or not, I was shocked. I didn't live in Delaware. I lived in on the eastern shore of Maryland, but I know a lot of people in the state of Delaware. I mean, only the northern part of Delaware, which is Newcastle County. There's only 3 counties in the state of Delaware, and Newcastle County is the northernmost part of the state. And there's a lot of Italians in Newcastle County. But you go in the 2 southern counties, there's very little ethnicity in those 2 counties. But they have a commission, which is good for them. They do a good job. I know the chairman of the commission. He's a very, very nice man.
So I'm from New York. What's wrong with them?
I don't know. I mean, we're trying to. Actually, we have Bob DiBiase, he was my predecessor. So, and he was the chairman for almost 10 years. And now the reason he stepped off the chairmanship is that he wanted to concentrate on trying to get the message out to the rest of these states that you too can establish a commission around Italian heritage, and you can follow our lead on how we got it, in legislation for our legislators in the state of New Jersey. Follow our lead, and you can make it happen in your state. So he's on a quest to try to get as many other states involved as possible. New York, I'll tell you, and it's not New York, Connecticut is hot on the heels of getting a commission. And there's a lot of Italians in the state of Connecticut. But, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, obviously New York and New Jersey, they would be the five more prominent states that many Italians immigrated to. And
Sure.
from the turn of the century, from the turn of the 20th century. But none of them have really gotten to the level of establishing a commission yet, except for us in Delaware.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get Bob on. We've been talking about it, but we haven't gotten a date yet. So we need to get him on too, and he could, people all around the country listen. So maybe we wake some people up if we have Bob on talking about his quest.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Again, it's important. And I knew there were a lot of Italians in New Jersey. I didn't realize it was like 30%.
It's about 30% of the
remarkable.
population that would identify as from Italian heritage. So that's a big number. I bet you it's close. It's probably very close to that in other states. I can't remember. I think another state might identify even more, but I think we're one of the top one or two in the country identify the population being that much of Italian heritage.
Well, yeah, and I learned so much doing this. In fact, I was on a Zoom call yesterday with people from Omaha, and there's a large Italian population in Omaha, and people, we don't think about that coming from New York and New Jersey, that there are these enclaves all around the country, and big ones too,
California, as you would think, I mean, California, a lot of people immigrated to California. There's a big population of Italians in California as well. Obviously they don't have a commission, but they're all, Italians immigrated, even in Louisiana, a huge population in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, that was a big port back in the day, back in the early 20th century, big port, obviously in Louisiana. So a lot of Italians went to Louisiana. Who would have thought that we'd be in the South? But, it's kind of similar to Southern Italy, Sicily, very hot, very, it's not as arid. It's very humid in Louisiana. I think Sicily is probably a little bit more arid than Louisiana, but still very hot. Very, very.
Well, yeah, and I interviewed. He's actually from Italy, but he's done so much research on Italian immigration. He's like kind of an expert on it, and he said that after the Civil War, they were trying to recruit Germans and Irish to work on the sugarcane, and they couldn't handle it. So they got some Sicilians and realized that they could handle the heat and the humidity. And so that's when they started bringing more of the Sicilian population over. And one of the most amazing parts of the whole thing was Arkansas. I don't remember his name, but the person who, I guess, found the Long Island Railroad brought a bunch of Italians to Arkansas. And he was going to actually leave them this plantation, but he passed away 2 years later, and that all kind of went bust. Arkansas of all places, right? You don't think of Italian pop, but they're there. We're there. We're everywhere.
Exactly. They're everywhere. They're all across the planet, but they all go to where the work was. They all go where they can make a living.
So it just popped into my head, knowing that your mom and dad were from Naples. Did they ever talk about the war and what it was like?
Well, my father was 10 years old. He always tells a story. He used to sell chocolates to the Italian soldiers. That's how I used to make a buck. My father was always a hustler, right? So he would sell chocolates, cigarettes. He was only 10 years old when the war, because he was born in 1933. So he'd been 12 years old when the war was over. So he was 10 years old when almost 11 years old when the Americans came in, through Normandy and finally came into Italy and then liberated Italy from fascism. But my father, it was pretty bad. It was, tough times. That's why my father's a hoarder. He keeps everything. There's always a chance I'm going to need this piece of wood that's this big. There's a chance I might need that piece of wood. Don't get rid of it. So they're very frugal, and it's all because of, the times they went through. My mother she was born in 1937. So by the time the war was over, she was only 8. She didn't remember much of it. So, but my father,
my cousin, because my uncle's family, he was 2 years old when my grandparents came, and he stayed there, and he was there through the war and everything. And my cousin told me that same thing. She used to go from Torito to Bari, which I guess is a half-hour train ride or something like that. And she used to sell things on the black market. Yeah.
whatever. I mean, they were very entrepreneurial. Whatever they could do. And my father's father was the he worked at a prison, and he was the warden at the prison. So
Wow.
you can imagine he was a strict disciplinarian. So if any of those boys got out of line, he was going to bust their butt.
Yeah, yeah. So your father's father, then he didn't have to go into the army because he was the warden at the prison.
I don't think so. From what I recall, I don't believe my father's father went into either war because he died early. He died young. He died in like 68. And I think he was barely, I don't even know if he was probably 60. So he was probably born at the turn of the century, like
Uh-huh.
in '02, '03. So he was probably too young to go into World War One and maybe too old to go into World War Two.
Yeah, or
So
maybe because of his job,
right, right. He
maybe
ran a
he didn't have
prison,
to.
right. He was already in the state government,
Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
they didn't need him. But I know that he used to tell a story of my grandfather's brother who the Germans took, and then they they killed him. He was killed. He was found, actually, his mother was looking for him. He found him in a ditch, and he cleaned him up. She cleaned him up, and then gave him a rightful burial. It was like very tragic.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah.
another story about that, and the one particular guy that I think it was his grandfather. He was able to get away. He jumped off the truck. He was maybe 15.
From the German truck.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
God,
yeah.
he's
He was
lucky.
able
Did
to
he
get
make it?
away.
Did he make it?
Yeah, yeah, he got away.
Oh
He got
my,
away.
good for him. There wasn't many people that
Yeah.
got away.
No, no, no. He was just, I guess they were just looking in the wrong direction or whatever, you know. And he was able to
Sometimes
get. But there
fate.
was another person who told the story about Sicily. Similar. He went out to check the chickens or something like that, and they got him, and that was it. He was gone.
They got rid of anybody who they need. And they were, you know,
Yeah, well, they would put them on trains or boats to go to
the concentration camps.
Germany. They were so resilient, going through that. And I guess that's like that with any war. But I think the amazing part about that war was the liberators were Italian Americans for the most part.
There was a whole, yeah, every part of the military, there were Italian Americans. So, they were liberated by, people that have left the country in the turn of the century and then came back to liberate their, their
Yeah.
motherland.
Yeah, yeah. It was the sons of the people who left.
Yep.
It's really incredible. And I don't know if there was too many other places that it kind of worked out like that, you know. And FDR wised up because at first I have my grandparents' enemy alien cards with their picture on it and everything.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, they had a register,
Right. Because
and
they
they was
were,
like 60 years old. You
yeah,
know,
I know, but they were still born of a country that's now at war with. We're at war with.
yeah, yeah,
They were internment camps for the Italians, which I didn't know about.
yes, yeah.
Right,
Wasn't
because
to the much. It wasn't to the extent as
the
the Japanese,
Japanese,
but they did in San Francisco and California. That they took their boats and everything away from them.
right? You don't hear about internment camps for other Axis country.
No,
You only hear about is Japan, and you don't really even hear about the Germans. I'm sure there were Germans that
there
were
was some. There was some.
internment, right? You don't even hear about the German internment camps. Only the Japanese, because there are probably hundreds of them in California. They probably were scattered across the East Coast very liberally. Probably weren't many, and they're very discreet, right? They didn't. It wasn't, people didn't know a lot of things back in the 40s.
Well, yeah, but then they did away with that real quick because he needed the Italian Americans to fight. He needed us to
Not in the
go. Yeah, like my four uncles, my grandmother's uh four of my grandmothers, she had six sons. One was still in Italy, and four of the ones that were here were all in the Army or Navy, and thankfully they all came back. They all
good for
they
them.
all got
That was
by.
very fortunate.
Okay.
All of them came back. Wow.
Yeah, well, only one saw real action in the South Pacific. He was on He was at Iwo Jima, and he was in the Navy. One of my other uncles actually was in Florida, and he was enlisted, but he taught the pilots how to aim the machine guns
Yeah.
from on a yeah. He was an instructor.
On a plane. Right. Right.
And they had him in like in a box or something like that they would move around by. There were there's nothing
No
like that up today.
simulators. Yeah, there wasn't any simulators.
Was it like a manual simulator or something? One uncle wound up in North Africa because they found out he spoke fluent Italian, so he guarded Italian prisoners.
There you go.
And he used to eat with the Italians because he said they were getting tomatoes, like canned tomatoes and spaghetti. And he said we were getting junk in the cans. So he used
They
to
were
eat with
getting
the
real
prisoners.
food. They were getting real food.
Because of the Geneva Convention, they had to get real food.
Yeah, exactly. Only the Americans came over with all this canned processed crap, and everybody else, the Germans and the Italians, they were eating decent. They had real bread. They had meats,
Yeah.
breads, cheeses.
Yeah, exactly. My ex-wife's father, he was in the army. He wound up in Germany, and he said they used to give the grown-up cigarettes and the kids chocolate because they had nothing else, and that's how they would bargain. And he had some really, really interesting stories. Well, Vince, this has been fantastic. I loved it. I mean, we could probably go on for another 4 hours, but but seriously, I mean, I would love to have Mom and Dad on if someday they want to do it and talk about Naples, growing up in Naples, and any of your cousins in Italy, especially the one in Ferrara, because like I said, I loved it there. I thought it was just beautiful.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Bob. It was very nice.
And one last time, for anybody who wants to find the Heritage Commission or get in touch with you or Margaret or anybody, how would they do that?
Well, so you go on our webpage, you can find us. There's all about everything we do. It goes into all our programs. It goes into all our lessons. And then there's a way to get a hold of Margaret, who's our executive director. Margaret Fontana is our executive director. She does a great job for us. Very responsive. Anybody wants to get a hold of her, email is on that webpage. So if you guys want to go out to NewJerseyItalianHeritage.org, www.NewJerseyItalianHeritage.org.
Super. All right. Well, thanks again.
All right. Thanks.